Return, O virgin daughter of Israel, to these your highways by which you went. Welcome to Reunion Roadmap, a place to discover the people and communities along the highway of restoration for Israel's house of Joseph. Reunion Roadmap is a B'nai Yosef North America production. Be our guest for the next hour as we meet the people of the emerging house of Joseph here in North America. Shalom, this is Safania Pappas with B'nai Yosef North America, and with me is Al McCarn, our Executive Director, and we're going to be going to North Carolina to interview somebody that I am familiar with, myself and Raina, and she's actually going to your congregation. Is that correct?
Well, yes, Bev Hall, as we have known her Bev from North Carolina, because we have another Bev in our intercessory circles, Beverly Denon from Montana. So this is how we keep them apart or tell them apart. So Bev Hall is a good friend, an old friend. She was at BINA's inaugural summit in 2016. I have had the pleasure of getting to know her, not just through B'nai Yosef North America, but through Prayer Search Now, through 10 from the Nations, and at our congregation, Founded in Truth. She has been in this movement for quite a while. Now, the reason Bev offered to tell her story is she's in a unique place, doing some unique things at a stage in life when people might tend to just withdraw and retire from everything. As you'll hear in the interview, she is 75 years old. She's been a widow for several years now. So would we expect someone like her to be active and be making a difference in life at this stage? Well, I hope we are expecting that, because Bev Hall is making a difference. We're going to hear that in this three-part interview, what she's doing not only in our congregation at Founded in Truth, but also at the two churches she attends. So we're going to hear in this first part of the interview how that came about. We're going to hear some of her story, how she came into the Messianic movement or the Torah awakening. And you'll also hear throughout the interview of her connection with the Jewish people, as in even attending a synagogue in the Charlotte area, a non-Messianic synagogue. So that's an interesting story too. She's been to Israel several times. And Bev is a person who just will not sit still. Praise God. She is so full of energy and so full of insights, and her heart is in the right place to see all of Israel restored and to see the final redemption of Israel and the nations. And she also has a heart to see our brothers and sisters in the traditional Sunday church come to understand their identity as part of Israel and the joy of honoring the Torah as our Messiah Yeshua did. And she's got a heart for children, especially children, which is why she has been so involved in teaching little ones in whatever church, synagogue, congregation she's been part of. And that's why she is also a retired elementary school teacher. So with that as introduction, let's go meet Bev from North Carolina, Beverly Hall. Hey, welcome back to another interview segment for Reunion Roadmap. This is Al McCarn. I am very pleased today to talk with my good friend and partner in many intercessory circles, Bev Hall, Bev from North Carolina, as we refer to you sometimes. Bev, welcome back to Reunion Roadmap.
Thank you.
Yeah, previously when you and I had talked, it was in the context of the nation's Ninth of Av, and I believe you were there in 2019 with the first group that went, feet on the ground in Israel to join with our Jewish family, our Jewish brothers and sisters, in mourning and fasting and praying over the 9th of Av, the fast of the 5th month. Well, we've been involved together in that venture and many other things since. But today, well, you've got a special thing on your heart that you want to share with the audience. So let me just ask you to introduce the topic.
So, what I'd like to talk about today is how I got involved with the synagogues, the local synagogues, and also the church. It's been a long process. In 2009, my husband and I didn't feel comfortable in the Christian church anymore. So we made this decision to go to a Messianic congregation. He was much more into it than I was. I couldn't understand this legalism and all these 613 laws. But fortunately, I was with a good congregation, and they did a lot of the traditional songs in Hebrew, the parading of the Torah. I learned some of the protocol. Like, for example, you don't touch the Torah scrolls. I made that mistake once in the synagogue. I'll never make it again. But there's things that we need to know, when to stand, when to sing. Kind of reminds me of my Episcopal church background. So we went to a couple different congregations and had a different perspective from each one about how do you live out this life, the Torah life. What do? We knew the basics. Shabbat, we got that one. But I couldn't even keep 7 feasts straight. It took me a long time to be able to understand the difference between Sukkot and Shavuot. I finally decided there's an H in Shavuot, so that comes before Sukkot with you. So that's how little I knew, but it's been a growing experience. And my husband and I were involved with a congregation in South Carolina. And we had just finished Sukkot. This was 3 Sukkots ago. That would have been 2020. And we celebrated Shemini Atzeret. So I knew, okay, the 8th day is important. Don't pack up on the 8th day. And then the day after, I went home first because I took my granddaughter to the airport, and I talked to him on the phone. Well, he never came home. He passed away right there at the campground. And that threw my life into a big tiz. I mean, everything was upside down. And after he was buried, I had a house fire, so I had to move out of the house. It was COVID. I couldn't work anymore because I work in the schools. I'm a retired school teacher. So I did substitute teaching. My friends are all older. We're in our 70s, and they went into quarantine. I actually lost one of my friends to COVID, but other friends were also passing away. So I'm realizing, I'm now in the generation my mom was in when her husband passed away. And now the friend group, they're passing away. And there's a constant change. So I kind of lost my mind, which I found afterwards is very common with a widow or widower. They just don't know what to do. They've lost half of themselves. So I moved to South Carolina. Because of the fire, I got rid of 3/4 of our possessions, and I rented a little apartment down there and was going to the Messianic congregation. But then I found myself very isolated there too, because everyone is so spread out. It's not like you have a community close by. You can go out to lunch. And again, I couldn't volunteer. I'm retired. I had lots and lots of hours on my hand. And I really went downhill after that. I couldn't eat and I couldn't sleep. And then one of our best friends at that congregation passed away. And that was like the tipping point. I could not take one more bit of grief. So I moved back into the Charlotte area, and I moved in with my daughter. Okay, so I'm sleeping on the couch at her house, and she's got a busy life, and my son-in-law have a busy life, and they were very understanding. But like, what am I going to do with my life now? I'm in a strange town. My friends that I had left were about 45 minutes away, so I couldn't just run to their house. So I missed children. I missed them terribly because I've always been with children. So I decided to go to church with my daughter and start volunteering in their children's church. And they just put me right into teaching. It's a very nice church. They're very open to people. And they're like, sure, just, pass the test. They do a background test and you can start teaching. And from there, I developed a girls' club, 4th and 5th grade. So I meet with them twice a month. So that was the beginning. And of course, you and I go to the same congregation. And I went cold turkey down there, knowing that you thought it was a wonderful place. And again, I say, can I work with the children? And after they kind of watched me for a couple months, because they're very cautious, they don't want just anybody teaching. They let me start teaching. Well, I needed more than that. So I started going to Celebrate Recovery because I'm working with codependency. So I didn't want to lean too heavily on my daughter and son-in-law and make them my entire life. And that was a great experience because I found people that were also working on hurts, habits, and hangups. So going to that group for a while, they finally said, just recently, why don't you become the women's leader in the women's group? And then I started working with a ministry nearby, working with Hispanic children. And that's a Christian mission. Well, they put me on their board. And now I'm going to be moving into a reading coach volunteer position. So all these doors opened up. And now I'm suddenly immersed in the Christian community.
So this gets to the interesting topic that we want to cover here, because I know you have so many years of interaction with the Jewish communities, Messianic and non-Messianic. I know you mentioned 2 congregations in South Carolina, Gates to Zion and then Founded in Truth, both of them great congregations. But it seems that the Father is leading you back to the church. And having heard your personal story, Bev, and understanding the personal circumstances you have with both your needs and the qualifications and gifts that you have to contribute, I get that. But why do you suppose it is that you're being led back into the Sunday church, having been awakened to the importance of Torah and keeping Shabbat?
Yeah, that's been a problem because in my travels and learning about this Hebrew roots walk, I felt very convicted that I shouldn't be involved with Christmas, Easter, go to church on Sunday. That was all bad. You don't want to mix in. You need to be separate. Well, I heard a really good talk one time. I wished I knew who gave it, but this Messianic pastor was talking about when you become a widow or a widower, if you lose somebody in your family, someone close, you are going to need your biological family. Because of this very fact, the Messianic congregations are very far-flung. Gates to Zion, you mentioned, is a couple hours away. Founded in Truth is 45 minutes away. So what am I going to do? Well, I wanted to be a part of my family. I've spent many Christmases away from them. In fact, right after Roger died, I spent that Christmas sitting in a parking lot in a park by myself because I wasn't going to be involved in all that. But now I'm in desperate need of human interaction. When you don't have a spouse with you eating and talking and going places, I'm just a people person. So now I've got this question. I need my daughter. Am I going to hold her off and say, I'm not going to church with you. I'm not going to have Christmas dinner with you. Easter is off limits. Even though the whole family is together, I'm going to sit in my own little apartment and do my own thing. Well, that just didn't sit right. It didn't feel right. And I think through the years, through listening to Reunion Roadmap, and especially Barry Phillips, talking about we need pastors, we need people who will understand other people's lives and minister to them. We need family. And maybe they're not believing like we are, but I need to interact with them. So I crossed that line. And a lot of people were surprised. They still are. It's like, I don't know. I don't know what she's doing right now. But it's been a couple of years and it's very consistent.
Okay, I have some thoughts about this from my own journey, because I remember back in 2014, after being in this Torah Hebrew roots walk for a decade, and we went through our own separation and throw out everything that's questionable, whether it's really pagan or not, and don't do any of the Christmas and Easter stuff. But I got to thinking, what are we missing here? Because the Torah keeping fellowships and congregations in this Hebrew roots walk, we don't have hospitals like the Baptists and Methodists do. We don't have orphanages like the Catholics do. We don't have other ministries and food kitchens and foster care ministries like you and I are involved with in South Carolina. So maybe we've missed something, and maybe we need to go back and reconnect with the traditional church to pick up those pieces we've missed. Does that resonate with what you've been through in the last 3 or 4 years?
It really does. There's not many places to serve when you're so far away from your congregation. If you're going to do something like a food bank, you got to go to the church. Pregnancy care center, you've got to go to the church. They're the ones supporting it.
So then why is it that so many of us have experienced this hard separation when we're first coming into this walk and we're questioning everything we've been taught? Why is it that we've done this, even to the point of keeping family at a distance on Christmas and Easter? Why did that have to happen, or did it?
Well, I like what Tony Robinson, the Hebraic heritage, what he says is that we are going to go through stages. When we come into this walk, first of all, we're going to have shock and awe. Then we're going to be angry. And then we've got to process all of that before we can really move out and live this in a mature way. So I don't want to put myself down or anybody else for separating and wanting to come completely out, because we have to know, what is our identity? Who am I? And then when we find out we're Israel, that's one thing I learned at Gates of Zion that made me so excited. You mean I'm Israel? Wow. So what does that mean? Oh, yeah. I wear long dresses and we dance and wave flags. That's really cool. I love all of that.
Yes. And let me tell you, folks, if you have not seen our Founded in Truth Shabbat services, often you will see the children in our congregation going around with flags during the worship time. Bev Hall has been instrumental in making that happen.
Yep. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is.
But I think sincerely, we want to do it right. When we understand where Easter and Christmas come from, we don't want to be a part of that. And I understand that. And I still have my boundaries. Like when they're doing cookies, my daughter gets out the Hanukkah cookie cutters in respect of me. In fact, her father is Jewish, so she has some roots there, and she's done Passover since she was a baby. So she has some understanding. And she also is another bridge into the Christian community, because every year she has Passover. And, she tells her friends about it and tries to get new people in on it that don't know.
Yeah, we're in an interesting place now because this movement, the Torah awakening among Christians, as I like to call it, we're now in the third generation. You mentioned your daughter who, well, grew up understanding Passover thanks to having a Jewish father. My kids, we made the shift out of the Sunday church to Messianic Jewish Fellowship when they were in middle school. So they were just getting socialized to the norm when the rules changed for them.
Mm.
And then, our pastor, Matthew Vanderels, he was growing up when the shift happened with his parents. So now we have to figure out again, we've got our identity, and knowing that we're part of the Commonwealth of Israel, that's a huge part of it. But we're in this in-between place still between church and synagogue. I could ask why. In fact, I'll ask your opinion. Bev, why do you think the Lord did that? What is he doing with this strange group of people who are not quite Christian and not quite Jewish, but a little bit of both?
I think I have an answer for that. I've heard various pastors and leaders say the church has to wake up. They have to learn, true Torah and start understanding Brother Yehuda, and we're grafted into him, and we should be respecting him. But how are they going to do it if nobody teaches them? And if we're separate from the church, nobody's going to know.
Here is Eved Adonai with Because He Shall Not Abandon.
המלך יננו, השם מושיע, המלך יננו, המלך יננו ביום קורנו. השם מושיע, המלך יננו, השם מושיע, המלך יננו, המלך יננו ביום קורנו. השם
Shalom, everybody. Welcome to the Midrash portion of Reunion Roadmap. This is David Jones. With me today is Barry Phillips. Shalom, brother.
Shalom, David.
Let me ask you a question, Barry.
All right.
When you have a relationship with somebody and you want to do something that you know they would appreciate, something they would admire, something that you know that they would want, do you consider their feelings, their thoughts, their intentions when you give them something?
Well, if I don't, I'm probably going to give them something I like, and that may not be what they like at all. So, yeah, that should be your first priority.
With that thought, I kind of want to make a quick hook and do a really fast segue into worship. My thinking this week was, is how we worship important? Not just whom we worship, but how we worship. Is it important? And I'm thinking specifically when you go into the Torah, in Leviticus 10, you read about Nadav and Avihu, and as they brought strange fire before the Lord, fire came out from before the Lord and consumed them. And there's a lot of different speculation as to why that happened. I'm not even necessarily thinking as far as all the different specific whys, other than this is something that Yahweh did not tell them to do. And also, if you read through the previous texts in the Torah, they were doing something that was outside of what they were anointed to do. They were operating outside of their area of anointing. They were doing something that Aaron was anointed to. And so if you put all these different things together, even down to this is Shmini on the 8th day, right? So this is after the 7 days of consecration, after the priesthood, the Levites and the priests were consecrated, set apart, put and established, ordained, if you want to use that terminology. They were here, and Yahweh says for 7 days, do not leave the area of the tent. Do not leave this courtyard. And then, so this is the 8th day. You would think after being in the presence of Yahweh for 7 days, after being ordained, after being anointed, after being put in service, after hearing the instructions from Yahweh as far as how to approach and how to do all these things, that here we get on this 8th day, they would kind of be, pardon the term, I really can't think of a better way to put it, a spiritual euphoria. You know, they would be just kind of ecstatic and just spiritually just on this heightened plane, so to speak, to use today's terminology. And as they were feeling like this, they brought strange fire before the Lord, speculating, the incense. They put incense on this fire, and they were offering this before the Lord. We know in Scripture, incense often relates to prayer as well. We see in the book of Revelation, chapter 8. But so they're worshiping Yahweh. They are worshiping Yah. And fire came out from before the Lord and consumed them. Now, if this was to happen today, I can only imagine what the thoughts would be and what would be happening. This is, I mean, well, wait a minute. I don't understand. Why is God being mean? I mean, they were just wanting to worship him. And then, they were just worshiping in a way that they understood how, or they were just worshiping him in a way that they wanted to, or they were just worshiping in a way that made them feel good, or they were just wanting to work. I mean, it's like, in all of this, we're kind of missing the point, aren't we? It's like we're approaching and doing these things in a manner of me. And Yahweh said he gave us ways to approach him. He said, this is how you worship me. This is how you do these things. And I believe in that there is a lot of room for personal expression. I really do. But when it came to coming right into the presence of Yahweh, you didn't do things out of order.
No.
Even in the pouring out an expression of your heart, because you were careful not to profane the holy things and the holiness of Yahweh in the midst of that. And in catching the spirit of that, if you go over to John chapter 4, when Yeshua was talking to the woman at the well, and she says, I perceive you're a prophet, and then It immediately goes into, are you going to affirm my current beliefs on the way I believe and how I worship? And Yeshua kind of says you're missing the point. Those who worship Yahweh must worship in spirit and in truth. And so a lot of people today go off on that. Well, we need to worship in spirit and in truth. But my question with all of that said is, who gets to define that? Today we consider truth as on a sliding scale. We have even the expression, well, my truth. No, there's no such thing as my truth. The way I see things, yeah, or the things that, the way that I perceive things that have happened to me in my life and things, yeah. But if you want to talk about truth, there is only one solid truth, and that is the word of Yahweh. Our perception of that and interpretation of that is where we get into all the problems.
Right.
And in spirit, well, yes, the spirit of the Torah has got to be there. His Ruach has got to be there for the refreshing and giving us the revelation and the knowledge and the equipping of all of these things to him. All of this has to work together. But the spirit and truth does not equate preference. And a lot of times we try to approach Yahweh in our preference, and tying all this back into Acts 15, the Jerusalem Council, when the issue at hand was, what are we going to do with all these Gentiles who want to serve Yahweh and they don't know how, and they're causing a ruckus? What do we do with them? And they gave them simple instructions as far as what to eat, how to live, abstaining from sexual immorality, idolatry, these things, and then go to the synagogue on Shabbat to learn the Torah. And so it's like learning how to approach him. So I kind of like laid it all out and did all these things, and there's a few directions we can go in here, Barry. And yeah, look, I'm probably taking up half the time already. But I'll turn the second half over to you. It just took a lot to kind of set it up, But what do we do with this, and what are we to learn, and how do we approach like this?
Well, I have a few thoughts here. One is that you were asking the question, who gets to decide that? Well, we assume that we do, since the origination of the act of worship comes out of us. Now, we may be prompted by the Ruach HaKodesh, but nevertheless, it is our choice as to whether we respond to that prompting or not. Since the fall in the garden, our means of discerning the face and heart, the will and intention of Yah has changed. We've gone from being created in his image, and I'm assuming, and that's a dangerous thing, but my assumption is, or perception might be, that prior to the fall into sin, that Adam and Chava had an ability to more clearly understand the word, the movement, the heart of Yah. That violation of relationship was not there at that point. So I believe that Adam was able to discern more with his spirit than his flesh being in the way, his flesh being more subjective to the will of the spirit. When the fall took place, the reverse took place as well, and man became more driven and compelled by his fleshly orientation than his spirit. Even when our spirit is renewed at the new birth and we're born again, there is still this prominence of the flesh that wars against the spirit. Galatians 5 describes that is an ongoing, nonstop battle between flesh and spirit. So that being the case, then, when we are given an opportunity to worship, or when we are motivated to sing a song or to offer a dance or just lift our hands and meditate on him, to worship through the word, our flesh will try to violate that intention. Nadab and Abihu, they, in Exodus Shemot 24, they were among 74 men that went up on top of Mount Sinai, or at least approached the top, at Yah's invitation. So they were among the elite A-listers that were invited, y'all come up here. And it says in that chapter that they saw the throne of Elohim, they perceived the heavens in his clearness, and they beheld the paved work of the sapphire stone proceeding from under his throne. Yet the hand of Yah was not upon them that he should slay them. And they did eat and drink before him. So there was a dinner on the ground, so to speak, in the very throne room of Yah without being slain. Moshe is the only one that ever approached anywhere close to this since the garden. And maybe Nadav and Avihu felt that they were among a privileged A-lister style class of beings that were being afforded near proximity to him without judgment. The other thing I'm thinking about, David, is you mentioned the incense. The smoke of the incense does represent prayer and intercessions. That's what that altar is for. But in putting it in the censers, that's an act that is reserved for Yom Kippur, where the high priest puts it on the fire pan or the censer, and its purpose is to cover and smoke the glory, the Shekinah Yah, so that man does not stare at it and be consumed. So in a manner of speaking, were they seeking to cover the glory so that they could step deeper into it? Were they smoking the revelation? Yah was in the business at this moment, fire falling from heaven, consuming the offerings, revealing himself. Israel's on their face. They're crying out that Yah, he is our Elohim. And in that euphoric ecstasy of a moment, they seek to cover that to some degree with this extravagant act of worship and smoke and incense. They presumed, and their presumption and assumption of my worship is acceptable because, well, I'm just this, I have this unique relationship with him. And that's a fallacy that continues in a variety of forms. Well, I believe he will accept this because he knows the sincerity of my heart. And that doesn't always work. There is better than presuming that what I offer will be accepted. It is better to seek his face and ask him, as you indicated at the very first, what do you want? And how do you want this? That's much safer. And to me, it's much more genuine and much more effective.
I'm thinking in that, in a show of our heart, we're asking what is his. 2 Peter 1:20 says, knowing first of all, no prophecy of scripture comes from someone's own interpretation. Because one of the things we learn from that is we cannot try to make the scripture say what we want it to say. We can't just say, well, this is just the way that I want to see it. It doesn't happen without working the boundaries or the boundaries of instruction that we were given there. And in doing that, we learn that Yahweh does not change, even though times do, seasons do, and situations in life that we experience here, But Yahweh does not change. And so even though we do not have a temple, we do not have a tabernacle, but yet we can still approach because he made a way for us to do that, and the offering was given. And so we're learning what he desires and what he wants. And we can't say, well, yeah, but God knows my heart, because if we really examine that and break that down, and really take a good look at our motives, it will reveal our heart. It's like, what I really mean is I just wanted to do it the way I wanted to do
it. Hasn't man always done that?
And God's okay with that, because we got an understanding. We may have good intentions. We may very well have good intentions. Okay, and I'm not saying that man is always evil. I'm just saying that even in our good intentions, can we still be looking at selfish issues and not truly saying, but this is the way that Yahweh said to do it? Because we do fall short of the standard of righteousness does not mean the standard of righteousness is now lowered. Instead, he brings us up to that standard, and he does that in Messiah Yeshua. Where we fall short, he made a way. It doesn't say now it's irrelevant. No, he made a way in Messiah Yeshua where we can't do that.
Yeah. Well, David, we run out of time, bro. We do appreciate your listenership. Thank you very much. For any questions or comments sent our way, if you have those, you can send them to us at Reunion Roadmap at B'naiYosefNA.com. Shalom, David.
Shalom, brother.
Now the music of Will Spires. This is Let There Be Light.
Gathered in here, you made hardcore dish, walking in trust, measuring all steps, because our desire is to seek you first, plowing our hearts in reverence, that we may approach you and feel your breath rushing through and rattle windows, bring in the rain on the earth of our hearts, like in springtime. Holy art thou, we raise our hands to adore you. Ruach's pouring down. Let there be light, let there be hope, let there be healing, restoring us hope. Let there be joy, let there be peace, let go of all unprofitable things. Let us return to the Ancient of Days. Let us give reverence unto our King. Let there be light. Let there be light. Gathered in here, laid hardcore dish, walking in trust, measuring all steps, 'cause our desire is to seek you first, plowing our hearts in reverence, we may approach you and feel your breath rushing through and rattle windows, bring in the rain on the earth of our hearts, like in springtime. Holy art thou, we raise our hands to adore you. Ruach's pouring down. Let there be light, let there be hope, let there be healing, restoring us home. Let there be joy, let there be peace, let go of all unprofitable things. Let us return to the Ancient of Days. Let us give reverence unto our King. Let there be light. Let there be light.
Well, that was the music of two old friends of Reunion Roadmap, Will Spires, and before that, Yved Adonai. And then we had the Midrash in which our elders asked the question that, Sophania, I'm going to ask you. Does how we worship matter?
Yes, absolutely it does. And it does matter because we are dealing with somebody who is a king. And to say that their subjects can come to the king in any haphazard fashion, you're not talking about a kingdom then. Really, you're not. And we are talking about a kingdom. And so since this is called kingdom worship, where it does matter.
Yes, it does. It occurs to me that we have experienced a tremendous measure of grace in this last 2,000 years. The Bible tells us of what happens when good-hearted people just started worshiping the Lord in the ways that they intended, not the ways he specified. And they talked about Nadav and Abihu, Aaron's two sons, who stepped outside the protocol and suffered the consequences. You know, the whole nation of Israel did that when they built the golden calf and said, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of Egypt. You know, they're not talking about false gods. This is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that they are worshiping in the form of a golden calf. And centuries later, King Jeroboam did the same thing. And he did it intentionally when he rebelled against the house of David and led the northern kingdom off into forming a rival kingdom. Well, he did that by also establishing a rival priesthood, rival temples, rival worship days, holy days, saying, it's too much for you, O Israel, to go up to Jerusalem. So God judged both kingdoms of Israel, but both of them had issues. So here's the matter of tremendous grace, Sophania, that I think that I have experienced, that the destruction of the Second Temple was not a sign that Jesus came and did away with all these things and that God was disgusted with all the temple worship. Now, I don't think that was the case at all. I think it was the case that the masses of Gentiles who were coming into the faith, coming into the commonwealth of Israel, acquiring this Hebraic identity, were unschooled in the protocols of approaching the holy God. And therefore, God removed the possibility that they might suffer tremendously for approaching him in the wrong way. Well, how about this? At the end of the age, are we supposed to be corrected and learn the right way? And that's how we get a new temple? You think that might be a possibility?
Yeah, could be.
Maybe that's what we are witnessing now in these very strange times we are living through. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Reunion Roadmap. If you've enjoyed the show, please go visit our website at BneiYosefNA.com, BneiYosefNA.com. We have a number of resources there that you might appreciate. We also have a donate button, and we would be greatly honored if you would partner with us. So on behalf of Sophania Pappas and Barry Phillips and David Jones, this is Al McCarn. Shavua Tov.
Thank you for joining us on Reunion Roadmap, a production of B'nai Yosef North America. Please come back next week for another visit with the people of the emerging House of Joseph here in North America.